Hi, I'm Rachel. Nice to meet you. Before I tell you my story, kindly hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I like to know where you're from. Now let's dive in. I'd been at Marlowe and Company for 9 years. 9 years. That's nearly a decade of late nights, skipped lunches, and weekends where I was tethered to my laptop while everyone else was out living their lives. I'd kept the place afloat through messy mergers, client meltdowns, and a rebranding disaster that could have sunk us if I hadn't stepped in. So when whispers about a new department head position started floating around, I didn't just hope. It felt inevitable. This was supposed to be my moment. My boss, Greg, had hinted more than once that loyalty gets rewarded and your time is coming. I believed him. The announcement was scheduled for a Monday morning meeting. I'd worn my best navy suit, the one that made me feel like I owned the room. I'd even taken the time to blow dry my hair. No messy bun today. As I sat there, heart pounding in anticipation, Greg smiled that slick, politician smile of his and started talking about fresh perspectives and the bright future ahead. Then he said her name. Please welcome our new department head, my niece, Amanda. At first, my brain didn't process it. I think I even smiled politely while people clapped. Amanda, who joined the company just 8 months ago. Amanda, whose biggest achievement so far had been organizing the office holiday party, which, by the way, went over budget and ended with an HR complaint. Greg kept talking about innovation and new energy, but his words were just static in my ears. My stomach turned cold, like someone had emptied a bucket of ice water into me. When the meeting ended, Amanda came bouncing over, her heels clicking like a metronome. I guess I'll be needing your help to get up to speed, she chirped, like this was some kind of fun little sisterhood moment. I forced a smile. Of course, I said, because that's what I do, stay professional. Even when I'm swallowing glass. The rest of the day was a blur. My phone buzzed with congratulatory messages from colleagues, some of them sounding almost relieved it wasn't them in the hot seat. I got through my tasks on autopilot, all while Amanda settled into her shiny new office, the one I'd been quietly envisioning as mine for months. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and stared at my reflection in the darkened window. It wasn't just disappointment I felt. It was betrayal. Greg had let me believe I was next in line, had dangled that carrot in front of me for years, only to hand it to family. Somewhere between my second and third glass, the anger solidified into something sharper. I wasn't going to keep giving my best to a place that couldn't even give me basic respect. The next morning, I walked into the office, kept my head down, and went through my routine. But a thought had lodged itself in my mind, pulsing like a heartbeat. It's time to go. I didn't know where I'd go yet or how it would all play out, but I knew one thing for sure. This was the moment my loyalty ended. The decision to leave had been made in my head, but my feet were still planted in the same gray carpeted office, the same stale-smelling hallways. Walking away from 9 years of my life wasn't as simple as tossing my badge on Greg's desk and storming out, tempting as that image was. I told myself I'd bide my time, start looking for opportunities, and maybe, just maybe, leave with a small victory. But in the meantime, I had to survive the Amanda era. Her first week as department head was enlightening. She spent most of it redecorating her office, ordering trendy furniture, hanging up inspirational posters, and having maintenance install a fancy espresso machine that groaned like it was in pain every time it brewed. She called daily brainstorm sessions that felt more like high school pep rallies. And the questions, endless, shallow questions. So what's our main client's name again? Wait, we actually track budgets? Do we really need all these reports? Every time she laughed it off with, I'm still learning. I felt my patience fray another inch. The final straw didn't snap in one dramatic moment. It bent slowly, day by day. One Thursday morning, she called me into her office. Her voice was sugary, the way people sound when they know they're about to annoy you. So, Rachel, she began, crossing her legs like she was posing for a magazine shoot. I was thinking, since you're so familiar with everything here, maybe you could take on the quarterly presentation for me this time. Just until I'm more comfortable. I stared at her. The quarterly presentation was her responsibility now. Hers to lead, hers to own. I'd been preparing them for years, yes, but this was the moment for her to prove herself. and she was asking me to do it for her. Sure, I said, my voice tight enough to snap. I walked out without making eye contact. That weekend, I opened my laptop and started updating my resume for the first time in years. It felt like pulling a forgotten part of myself out of storage. Dusty, but still solid. I listed every major project, every client I'd saved, every award I'd earned. And with each line I typed, my sense of worth came back into focus. By the following Monday, I'd sent out a handful of applications. Discreet ones, no LinkedIn updates, no networking events in town where gossip could spread. I was playing it quiet. Then came the moment that told me my exit couldn't come soon enough. It was a team meeting, Amanda at the head of the table, flipping through my presentation like she'd stayed up all night crafting it. She didn't just skim over my work. She presented it as hers. Word for word, slide for slide, not a single acknowledgement. Greg beamed the whole time, nodding like a proud uncle. Fantastic job, Amanda. This is exactly the leadership we needed. Something inside me went very, very still. Not the kind of anger that bursts out. It was colder, heavier. The kind of anger that fuels action. When the meeting ended, I didn't storm out. I didn't confront her. I simply closed my laptop, went back to my desk, and made a promise to myself. The next time I walked out of this building, it wouldn't be for lunch. It would be for good. Once you make a promise to yourself like that, every day becomes a countdown. I started seeing the office differently, not as a place I belonged, but as a place I was passing through. The clatter of keyboards, the faint smell of burnt coffee, Greg's booming laugh in the hallway. It all felt strangely distant, like I was watching it from the outside. I kept working, of course. Old habits die hard, and professionalism was practically stitched into my DNA. But every email I answered, every spreadsheet I updated, came with the quiet knowledge. This will be one of the last times I do this here. In the evenings, my apartment became a war room. Job boards, company reviews, phone calls with recruiters who spoke in hushed, conspiratorial tones. I'd sip tea, jot notes, and imagine what it would feel like to be somewhere, anywhere else. One Tuesday afternoon, I got the email that would change everything. Subject: we'd like to meet with you. It was from StriveTech, a company I'd admired for years. Their work culture was practically the opposite of Marlowe and Company: transparent, merit-based, innovative without being chaotic. I'd sent them my resume on a whim, not expecting to hear back so soon. We scheduled an interview for Friday. The rest of the week crawled by, every interaction with Amanda somehow amplifying my determination. She asked me to tidy up her reports, proofread her emails, even pick out graphics for a presentation she hadn't written. Greg popped in now and then to congratulate her on her vision. I smiled through it all, because soon, their little kingdom would no longer be my concern. Friday morning, I put on my sharpest outfit, not my office best, but my interview best. I walked into StriveTech's lobby, and the difference hit me instantly. Bright, airy space. People who actually smiled like they meant it. Even the receptionist greeted me like she was happy I existed. The interview wasn't an interrogation. It was a conversation. They wanted to know how I thought, how I solved problems, how I handled setbacks. They listened. They nodded. They took notes like my answers mattered. By the end, the hiring manager leaned forward and said, "Rachel, your track record speaks for itself. I think you'd be an incredible fit here." I walked out of that building lighter than I'd felt in years. 3 days later, the offer came through. Better salary, better benefits, and most importantly, a role where my work would actually be mine. That night, I sat at my kitchen table again, just like the night I decided to leave. This time, the wine was celebratory. I drafted my resignation letter slowly, savoring every word. Simple, polite, and final. The next morning, I printed it, slipped it into a plain envelope, and walked into the office like it was any other day. I didn't let the envelope out of my hand until I was standing in Greg's doorway. He looked up, surprised. "What's this?" "My resignation," I said evenly. 2 weeks from today, I'll be moving on." His smile faltered, just for a second. Then came the practice managerial response. "Well, we'll be sad to lose you, but we wish you the best." I nodded, turned, and walked away. No drama. No second guessing. Just the steady, certain feeling that I'd taken back control. But I had no idea that my leaving would set off a chain of events I couldn't have planned for, even in my wildest daydreams. The first week after I gave my notice was oddly peaceful. I came in, did my work, and counted down the days without feeling that familiar knot in my stomach. People stopped asking me to take on just one more thing, as if my 2-week clock made me suddenly invisible. Amanda, though, she was visibly uneasy. She'd pop into my cubicle at random, asking for little reminders about procedures, client preferences, or file locations. I'd answer politely, but I didn't go above and beyond anymore. That extra effort? I was saving it for Strive Tech. By my last day, I could already see small cracks forming. Amanda had tried to lead a client presentation solo, and according to a friend in the room, she stumbled through basic details, mixed up numbers, and wrapped it all with a nervous laugh that didn't land. Greg still clapped for her afterward, but the client didn't look impressed. When I finally walked out for the last time, box in hand, badge turned in, I thought that would be the end of it. It wasn't. 2 months into my new role at Strive Tech, I got lunch with Melissa, a close friend still at Marlowe and Company. She looked exhausted, like she'd been running on fumes. "You won't believe how bad it's gotten," she said between bites of salad. "Amanda, she's in way over her head. Half the team is frustrated. The other half is looking for new jobs. And Greg? He's doubling down, insisting she just needs more space to grow. Meanwhile, clients are leaving." I listened, sipping my coffee, feeling a mix of satisfaction and disbelief. Marlowe and Company had always been built on hard work and steady leadership, but now it was sinking under nepotism and stubborn pride. Melissa lowered her voice. "You know the big Harper account? They left last week. Said they needed someone more reliable. That account alone had paid for an entire floor's salaries. Losing it wasn't just a setback. It was a wound that would keep bleeding. Back at Strive Tech, I thrived. My ideas were heard, my work credited, my effort rewarded. I wasn't dragging other people's responsibilities behind me anymore. I was doing what I was hired to do, and excelling. One afternoon, I got an email from a former Marlowe client. They'd tracked me down through LinkedIn, asking if I'd be open to working with them again, this time through Strive Tech. I passed it to my manager, who grinned and said, "Let's make it happen." A week later, that same client was signing a contract with us. It hit me then. My departure hadn't just freed me. It had shifted the balance. The cracks at Marlowe were spreading, and I was building something stronger somewhere else. But the real gut punch came from Melissa a month later. Layoffs. Not a few people, entire teams. And Amanda? Still in her position, still out of her depth, still being shielded by Greg. I should have felt purely satisfied. And yes, there was a certain poetic justice in watching the house of cards fall. But a part of me felt something else. Pity, maybe, or the quiet sadness of seeing a place I'd once cared about self-destruct. Still, one thing was certain. Leaving had been the best decision I'd ever made. What I didn't know then was that my story with Marlowe and Company wasn't quite finished. Because sometimes, the past has a way of circling back, right when you least expect it. It happened on a rainy Thursday. I was rushing into Strive Tech's lobby, umbrella dripping, when I heard someone call my name. "Rachel." I turned and there was Greg, though not quite the Greg I remembered. He looked smaller. His suit was rumpled, his tie askew, and there was a heaviness in his face I'd never seen before. "Hey," I said cautiously. "What are you doing here?" He hesitated, glancing around like he didn't quite belong. I have a meeting with your CEO. Strive Tech has been doing great lately, I hear. I wanted to talk about potential partnerships." It took me a moment to process the irony. Marlowe and Company, the company that once had its pick of clients, was now knocking on doors. And not just any doors, my doors. We stepped aside so others could pass through. The silence between us was thick. Finally, he said, "Things haven't been the same since you left." I didn't respond right away. I wanted to see where he was going. "Amanda, she's still learning," he went on, his voice tight. "We've lost some big accounts. Couldn't keep certain teams together. It's been challenging." Challenging. That was one way to put it. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, my tone even. "But I'm really happy where I am now." He nodded, but there was something in his eyes. Regret, maybe. You were one of the best we had, Rachel. I should've. I didn't. He stopped himself, sighed. Anyway, good seeing you. And just like that, he was gone, walking toward the reception desk with shoulders a little more slumped than when he'd arrived. I stood there for a moment, feeling a swirl of emotions. Part of me wanted to savor it, the unspoken acknowledgement that they'd made a mistake. But another part of me just felt done. Not triumphant, not bitter, just ready to leave that chapter exactly where it belonged, in the past. The meeting he was there for? It didn't lead to a partnership. Strive Tech wasn't interested, and I wasn't about to advocate for them. Business was business, and they'd built their downfall themselves. That evening, I walked home in the rain without opening my umbrella. The city lights blurred in the puddles, and I realized something. Success wasn't about proving people wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right, choosing a place that valued me, and refusing to stay where I was only tolerated. I'd done that, and I'd never let anyone take it from me again. If you enjoyed my story, don't forget to like and hit subscribe. You will also enjoy other stories on AJ Family Drama. Until next time, bye.